Okay, so let's start talking about today's topic or today's really discussion, because that's what I wanted to have for today was more of a discussion than a talk on my part. Um, we should note at the beginning, as Abbas did before we got started, that John Lewis's funeral has been going on today. So a real hero of the civil rights movement. And so much more beyond. I mean, up until his death just a few days ago, he was engaged. He was constantly trying to make the world a better place and make sacrifices. So it's a really important time in our history at this point. It's sad to see the funeral happen, but I think it's highly symbolic of what's going on right now, of the transitions and the shifts that we're dealing with. So today's topic is, of course, what should humanists do now? When I was talking about this with Andrew, what we might make the topic, he says, what is the next right thing was the way he wanted to put it. Basically, right, the idea is what is the very next thing, the thing that we should do? So that's a challenge these days. I think it's a particular challenge because we have so many problems out there that we are faced with. I mean, you just flip on the news for a little bit today and they bounce from one to another. You can see police brutality. You can see a secret police force that people are uncertain about where and how it's come from and who's regulating it and what's being recorded in that way. There's hurricane coming through, which on one hand is normal, although this is fairly early. It gets us worried about it. It's hitting an area that is heavily infected with COVID-19. We don't know how that's going to interact. I mean, we just get one major problem after another piling on us. And that's often what happens when we start to think about problems, right? What stands out is this first class of problems, the immediate and urgent, right? The thing we have to do right now today is pressing on us. So when we think about what problems, and when you make some suggestions later for what you think the problems are, one category is, of course, the immediate and urgent, right? There's the things that we need to do now because they're pressing in on us at this moment. Of course, as soon as you phrase it that way, the immediate and urgent, then you can think about, well, what's missing from that category? A lot of these problems are coming about because of longstanding and systemic problems that are back there behind it. The hurricane itself, right, coming earlier than it ever has before. Surely this is being influenced to some degree by climate change, which has been a longstanding problem that has systemic causes of many different kinds. We can't blame just one industry or one person or one thing, right, for having created this. But we have to be able to get at it, right, from all of these different angles. If we want to look at police brutality, this is again a system that has created this. We've had a system that has been racist in a number of ways, and have been willing to look the other way, which then encourages bending of rules, which encourages breaking of rules, which encourages pushing it farther and farther as more and more people get hit. So the systemic problems that have been back there behind this are coming to a head, right, in that point. So maybe we shouldn't be dominated by the immediate and urgent, but also by trying to look at the bigger picture of where we are and what kind of systems we might be able to change or what kind of longstanding problems we need to alter so that we don't have nearly so many immediate and urgent problems. There's a third category of problem we might also want to talk about that I think is important but tends to get neglected these days. I had a little trouble coming up with a title for it. I mean, it's kind of a problem of meaning. It's kind of a problem of spirit in some ways, right? A sort of spiritual problem. It's kind of a personal problem, although it definitely has social effects. The one I'm talking about is that the stories that have made our lives meaningful, that people have used to shape the way they think about what they're doing with each other, what they're doing with their lives, where they're at within their lives, these stories have come apart in a lot of ways. Part of this is the decline of religion, that there are fewer religious people and people are leaving religion. So what had previously given them meaning and shape and understanding to their lives has come apart. Part of this is changes in our evaluation of our own history, right? There's a lot of criticism of not just the Confederates and the Confederate monuments, but what we might consider the founding fathers, right? So the ideals that had given us guidance that we got from them are being brought into question. Sometimes by those own ideals, like saying these founders didn't live up to their ideals, but sometimes the ideals themselves get questioned. The story we tell ourselves about who and what we are get questioned. The shape of what it means to be an American, right, has changed a lot. I was just listening to music from when I was younger, and there was during the Cold War that they were talking about, this lyrics come up about the Cold War and the way that they thought of themselves in that shape. And I was like, gosh, that's just such another time. That's not the story that we're living in now. So that's changing as well. We need then to think about new identities and new scripts. Like, how should we be thinking about ourselves? How should we be thinking about the meaning in the shape of stories that engage with the rest of this community? So I identified three kinds of areas, right, that we might talk about. The immediate and urgent kinds of problems, the longstanding and systemic kinds of problems, and the problems of meaning that we're struggling to come up with. I think humanism is sort of primed to start talking about that, right? It's not lodged in any of those, but it's not clear to me that we have articulated an obvious humanist identity or a clear humanist story that might shape the way that we think about that. So I think it's still a little bit broad and empty and might need a little bit more shaping. All right. So that's what I wanted to do to start it. But then I want this to be a discussion with you all to talk about what you think like we should do now, or what you think the biggest problem at the moment is.